Good afternoon. It is June 5th, 2018. This is Tom Shaw once again with a new video concerning Shaw history. We are at the farm site of where David Palmer Shaw farmed and lived. Excuse me just a moment. Pick up my notes here. Just a little breeze here today. David and Clara Shaw lived at this farm site up until about 1935 or the mid-30s. David was the seventh son of Edward Shaw and Nancy Beebe, and he was the grandson of John Palmer Shaw. You'll note the middle name of Palmer. Maybe he got that from his grandfather. But anyway, they lived here. David and Clara had three sons. The first son was Elwood Douglas Shaw. The second son was Shirley Woodrow Shaw. And the third was Gail David Shaw. In the 1880 census, David Shaw, age 2, is listed as living in the household of Edward and his wife Nancy. On December 23rd, 1914, at age 31 in Palo Alto County, Iowa, David married Clara E. Douglas. Clara was born in Wayne County, Iowa. On the 1915 Iowa census, Dave, age 37, was living in West Bend, Palo Alto County, Iowa. He was married and his occupation was laborer. His total earnings for 1914 totaled $600, and he had been unemployed for 4 months. Sometime between 1915 and 1918, David and Clara homesteaded near Scobie, Montana, and then they returned to Iowa. Just of note, there was one other, his youngest brother, number 8 son, William Delbert Shaw, also moved to Scobie, Montana sometime during that time frame. On September 12, 1918, David, age 41, he registered for the World War I draft. His residence was listed as Rodman, Palo Alto County, Iowa. Other information from his registration record is that his occupation was laborer, and his employer, based out of Chicago, Illinois, was the CRI and PRR Railroad. That's Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad. He listed Clara Ellen Shaw as his nearest relative. His physical description was tall, medium build, with dark brown hair and eyes. In the 1920 census, David P., aged 39, is listed as head of household. Also listed are Clara E., wife, age 32, Elwood O., son, shown to be born in Montana, age 3, and Shirley W., son, age 2. The family was living at rural Rodman, Fern Valley Township, Palo Alto County, Iowa. In the 1925 census, though his first name is unreadable, David P., age 47, is the head of the household. Also included are Clara, Elwood Douglas, Shirley Woodrow Shaw, Gail David Shaw, and niece Florence Edith Shaw. And I'll get back to Florence Edith. I'll have to do a separate video. You saw her gravestone in the Union Cemetery video I shot. That's a whole other story, and I'll address that in another video. In 1930, the family was living in rural Mallard or West Bend, Ellington Township, Palo Alto County, Iowa. And that's where we're at right now, Ellington County. Just to the south of us, you go down 1 mile on the corner, and there was Ellington number 8 school. And that's probably where Elwood and Gail probably went to school, down at Ellington number 8. As a reference point from this tree pile here, I'll scan over just a little ways, and somewhere in here, right about in here, is where the house stood. I do remember seeing the house one time, but it has been torn down. And then as I scan around to the right, there's one great big old barn that's still living. Now my father, Alan Shaw, visited this would be his father's uncle, be my dad's great uncle. And so Dad's going to tell you about his one visit.
Well, I was here when they sold out and moved to Oregon, and I was just about 4 or 5 years old, and all the beds and everything was outside, and I was wondering what they was going to do, how they was going to sleep, or what they was going to do, until my dad come and got me. It was in the wintertime, it was cold out, and the guys were all outside during the farm sale. So I later on found out what was going on and this and that, and it didn't worry me so much. And we moved in March of 1936, within a half a mile south of this farm and 3/4 of a mile west on 120 acres there. And the Shaws already had moved to Oregon by that time. So
Okay,
that's
thanks.
about all I know about this here.
Okay.
We used to come here and go hunting. My wife's dad and my dad and her grandpa, we used to come up here from Havelock and hunt, sometimes hunt pheasants and different things on this here. But I talked to Kenneth Shaw, and he's a grandson of the youngest one of the Dave's boys, and I talked to him some time ago, and we'll keep in contact with him.
Okay, as I pan, thank you, Dad. As I pan around to the left, I also have a family connection in a couple ways through my mother. Over in that direction, a mile or two, was the old Carpenter home place. My mother was a carpenter, and she spent a good amount of her childhood.
And the trees right over there.
Those big grove of trees right over there. We have another connection, and as I said, David's wife's name was Douglas.
Yes.
And she has a niece named Adeline McQuown, but she was a Douglas. And Adeline is the daughter of Burnell and Gladys Carpenter Douglas. So I have a connection with David Palmer's wife, and it would be Ken Shaw there in Idaho through the Douglas. And I did an interview with Adeline, and sometimes you see Douglas spelled with one S and Douglas spelled with two S's, and she very firmly said that her father very proudly used the double S, so Douglas with two S's on the end. So this farmstead is located at the intersection of 510th Avenue and 470th Street, Ellington Township, Palo Alto County. It's located approximately halfway between Mallard and West Bend. Mallard being to the southwest, about 7 or 8 miles. And about due east is West Bend, about 7 miles, 8 miles, or something like that. David and Clara did move to Oregon. When they passed away, they were brought back to West Bend, and they're buried in the West Bend Cemetery.
I have a picture of the cemetery, the stone and stuff in West Bend, and I also, I forgot now what I was going to say. I can't remember.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to making a lot more of these. So until next time, thanks.